of New World Seder. On the show today, I have the pleasure to have Lior Barak. Hi, Lior. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Lior is you know what, I'm going to say it the way you wanted me to say it. So a gay Israeli Jewish activist.
I guess, yeah.
I was going to go with a gay activist, but you decided to throw in that extra part, and I guess there's meaning behind it.
Sure.
And, the fact that there's meaning behind it for you, I felt that we should definitely have this conversation today. So the reason you're on the show is, being someone from Israel, you have seen the world a little bit differently. So just because you're a part of the larger gay community does not mean that you don't know what's really going down in Israel. You can see things for what it is. And usually when we're seeing people coming out from the gay community, they have to express a more extreme leftist ideas. How do those ideas reflect, your community or your surroundings when they don't know the real truth about Israel? And there's that borderline between anti-Semitism and, leftist ideas.
It's frustrating, to say the least. It's very frustrating as a gay Israeli Jew to see things unfold. And, I think you and I both know how this has been going through the decades. We've been dealing with this even back in Toronto in the college days, when we saw these things starting to unravel in York University and so on and so forth. And attending some anti-American, it started as anti-American, protests.
Okay.
Protests in downtown Toronto. I remember it was around Bush era. And when Bush launched the war in Iraq, I took to Toronto after we drove down and we saw this. We thought it was a parade. We realized it was a protest against the United States when I saw upside down US flags, X's on Israeli flags. And of course, me being the hot-blooded Israeli, I didn't care too much about anything at that point. I went and bought the nearest shop. I bought a huge American flag and went and started protesting against the protesters. And throughout the crowd, I started realizing there's a hell of a lot of gay people here. And it really shocked me, because I had no idea that you would take one extreme that fights for liberalism and equality to the other extreme that fights against all that and hangs gays from cranes and throws rocks at them to their death. And now they're united. And that was shocking to me as a gay Jew, as a gay Israeli. And, it was just something that I had never experienced before. And I realized things were not as I thought they were. And it was very confusing for me. But needless to say, I did stand up to the gays that were fighting, and they called me a Nazi. They called me an American bastard, even though I was fully Canadian and Israeli. I had no American citizenship or anything like that. They just called me all kinds of names because I raised the American flag against their protests.
Do you believe that it comes from victimhood? It's almost like they're always looking, and by them, I mean, anytime there is a side on the extreme left, they're looking to bond with someone that is the victim at that time.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
David and Goliath, and in this scenario, Israel is the Goliath, and the poor Palestinian people or poor Iraqis, they're the Davids. So they feel that they must support them, even though they have no idea that this David, so they call it, is actually the perpetrator, the one that would kill them at any point in time. So they don't know the history or the background behind that.
It's complete lack of education. I blame it on that. I blame it on the ongoing propaganda. I feel that the Arab and the Muslim cause is heard much louder than the Israeli one. And that's also our fault because of the lack of the PR that we do. And we also don't have oil states, and we don't have all the money to buy education in the United States as they're doing. But I also feel that, like you said, they like to protect the underdog. To them, themselves, gays, being the underdog all their life, because they're rejected by the church, they're rejected by religion in general, right? They're rejected by their religious and God-fearing parents. And at school, they're bullied by the same folks that probably go to their churches or their synagogue or whatever it is. So there has become this bitterness towards religion in general, yet not the Islamic religion, which is funny. However, there's this bitterness towards their own religion because of their own experiences. And that, in combination with America being viewed as an ally to Israel and one of its biggest supporters financially, militarily, back and forth, there's that strong relationship and understanding and national security agreements. And because of that, they see Israel as an arm of imperialist America.
Do you think it's, well, clearly you brought it up by saying that, but do you think that it's more of anti-establishment? Like, you know, the government's doing us wrong, everyone's doing us wrong. And as I said, it goes back to this like victimhood of almost like, who can we help? But yet, I want to get into your story a little bit. You visited Israel as well. You're born in Israel, but you visited Israel as an adult. And I know that you lived there for a little bit, for like a short time as an adult, and you had relations with people in Israel, and you got to see a little bit of the Arab community, the Arab gay community that comes to Israel, and you sort of have this understanding of what Israel is really about. Do you ever go out and teach your, you know, the people in your community, in the gay community, larger gay community, about how Israel takes care of all its citizens? And yes, we're not perfect. I mean, no one is. I mean, the whole idea of the gay movement being normalized is only in the last 15 to 20 years. So we're still learning how to behave, learning the proper terms to describe people, but there is still this freedom in Israel that you would never get in a place like the Palestinian territories, or let's be honest, any Arab or Muslim state.
Yes, I have tried to reach out. I have tried to do this in a logical, rational way. I think the world is in a different place today. Aside from being more accepting of the gay community, I think people are more obsessed with being right, and people are more obsessed with aligning themselves to a party and a belief system, whether it's liberalism or conservatism. And it's very hard to take them away from everything they've kind of learned over the years, whether it was factual or not, and they have their belief system already set. So it's very hard to change their minds. When I try to bring that up, and I've had plenty of these and online arguments, and people love me, people hate me, it doesn't really matter to me. I speak my mind. But what I found was that they have a name for it. When you use Israeli acceptance of the gay community, you are simply pinkwashing all the crimes made by the Israeli government.
Right.
And as such, you're still the devil, you're still the bad guy, you're still the aggressor, and the Palestinians are the victims.
But here's the reality behind it. There are many gay activists who were invited to come to Israel and have very much changed their minds about what they saw. And most of the people that have been to Israel come back with amazing stories of diversity. We're talking like Irshad Manji, for example, a representative of Canada, who is a known lesbian Muslim, who was now then starting to work with Israel, and clearly they said the same thing about pinkwashing. But the bottom line is, there is a reality that really happens in Israel and those territories. So it's one thing, you know what, you don't want to support Israel. Fine, nobody needs you to have to carry an Israeli flag. But when you're going to a rally, or you're going, to a parade, a pro-gay parade that happens in June, and all of a sudden you're seeing flags where they're using political slogans like queers against apartheid Israel, you know, which is bluntly anti-Semitic, bluntly anti-Israel. There is nothing behind it. They're using words such as apartheid, what has to do with the South Africans, and, you know, it's like saying, here's the word rape, we're now going to attach it to this person because we feel that he is that person. So how do you feel as somebody that is a part of this community, and you're seeing the hatred? And in my opinion, it's blind hatred, because if they knew, then they wouldn't be able to do that, or they wouldn't do that, at least.
How do I feel? I feel a very strong way about it. I actually witnessed that myself, and I've seen that group because we had a group in Toronto Pride years ago with the Israelis with the rainbow Israeli flags and all of that. And right behind us, guess who was there? apartheid's, gays
Queers
against
against
Israeli apartheid or whatever it was. It's an abomination to me. It's an abomination. I feel like, how would they feel if they claimed that Ronald Reagan, for example, was a no good president because of the AIDS epidemic and the way he handled it? And then a bunch of gays go around saying, gays for Ronald Reagan. To me, if they feel a certain way about it during a time like that, that's how I feel about them during a time like this. And it's self-destructive to the gay community because, you know what, yeah, you're partnering up with these folks now, that's fine. But when push comes to shove and things go their way, they're not going to be partnering up with you, I assure you. In fact, they're going to get rid of you.
I know that, you've lived, your life has been a little bit of a struggle because of identity, right? Like, I can't imagine living my life in hiding in some ways, like hiding the fact that I like women or hiding the fact that, having my natural wants that's not hurting anyone. Talk to me a little bit about maybe what a gay person goes through his own struggles and how, a lot of gay people, they want to be a part of a community, right? They want to be loved. They want, to be appreciated because they've gone through a lifetime of sort of exclusivity, right? And now all of a sudden I see where you, for example, are speaking up against it. Not against the gay community, but like against a lot of their ideals and who they support. Talk to me a little bit about how it makes you feel that your life is almost always a battle, and it's a battle of freedom of ideas, because if they have their opinions, I'm totally all right with it. But I feel that it's more than just ideas. It's turning into something much, much bigger, like, as I said, anti-establishment, victimhood, and almost equating their life to the poor Palestinian life.
It is astonishing, but you can understand where they're coming from in a way. When their entire life has been led in a way, our entire life has been led as living a fake life, living as, I'm not speaking to the current generation, and I'm talking Generation Z and the millennials, they've had it a lot easier than us, going back to, the 90s through the early 2000s. Things were still drastically different then.
Right,
we're talking about people
accepted, and now it's a reality. Now
it's widely accepted. It's celebrated a lot of the times. Where before, God forbid, you were gay in high school, you knew what that's all about, right? You were either made fun of, mocked. Nobody would want to be friends with you. Everybody would run away from you because you were this, abomination, to say the least. And let's not even talk about the situation at home when you have Russian Jewish parents who think a certain way. So you can't be you anywhere. Right. So you learn to take on a new persona, and living in a certain foreign persona all of your life makes you lose your own identity. And when you lose your own identity, you start to be confused about what you like and what you don't like, and how to express yourself, and who you fit in with and who you don't fit in with. Everything becomes a big question mark. And we as gays, and again, I don't speak on everybody. My story and my experience is not like everybody else's journey, but I know personally, it took me through my 20s and then 30s to start exploring who I was, because I had suppressed all that through my teens and early childhood. We're not allowed to explore that, right? We weren't allowed to explore all that. And yeah, it's been a confusing thing. And again, I never grew up, even when I was a teenager, even through my college days, I never grew up aligning myself with conservatism, because I wasn't a conservative based on what I thought I was. But I also didn't align myself with liberalism after discovering what they think and who they put themselves against and who they align themselves with. So it was definitely a confusing era for me. You do your damned, you don't your damned. But I think this new generation has it a lot easier than all of us did back in the day. So today I have less patience for excuses. because it's no longer where, you know, the parents kick you out of the house these days. And I'm not, again, not 100% of the gays are experiencing the same thing, but today a lot of the parents are very supportive. A lot of the parents I see go with their kids to Pride and hug them and tell the world how they're proud of their gay child or their transgender child. I love it. I support it. I wanted to see that years ago. However, when I say my people, I'm either referring to the gay people or I'm referring to Jews and Israelis, okay? And Americans and Canadians. Those are my people. But when I see a certain group of my people go from being supportive and loving and liberal, let's call it liberalism, and liberal and wanting to have peace and love, and why wouldn't you align yourself with a country that does all that? Why are you aligning yourself with the people who are against the same ideals? It's mind-boggling to me. And again, it goes back to them feeling like they're the underdog and they need to be protected from the harsh aggressiveness of American and Israeli militarism and whatever it is that they view us as, because you know what's good is bad and what's bad is good now. That's what the world seems like it's going. So America is no longer a good country. America no longer stands for what's good in the world. America is a superpower that is policing the world, that is involved in conflicts that's none of their business.
Right.
And Israel is like that little brother that runs after them, I think, in their mind. I can't speak for them, but that's how I think they view us.
Do you think many of these people have ever left their bubble and saw what's outside of their own backyard? Because the bottom line is, if you go to the Middle East, you know, like forget about being gay. You cannot have religious beliefs. Like if you want to go to Saudi Arabia, you can't have any Star of Davids or any crosses or anything of the sort.
What about holding hands?
Oh, of course, unless you know it's done in a friendly way. Like you see Saudi Arabians holding hands in a different.
They know. They know.
Absolutely. But what I want to talk about when it comes to this is when this particular community, feels, it's one thing if they're peacekeepers, like they're sort of like the people who, the flag represents peace and love and
the flag represents acceptance. Each
right.
color of the rainbow is the acceptance of all the different gay, views and the different gay
right.
expressions that people have.
But it's also like you're looking at one community, like the Jewish community, that very much evolved. And what I mean by that, think about, Jewish people. You're never going to find in the Torah or any Jewish scriptures that being gay is accepted.
Right.
You're not going to find it. You can argue until tomorrow. They'll say no. However, you're still human and you're still are dignified. They still want to take care of you. They're still, they don't have to agree with your lifestyle. But you're seeing the evolving, especially with Jewish parents, especially, like even religious figures who are now advocates for that particular community. And yet when you're looking at the other side, the side that's currently being defended, the side that's currently, that is holding hands, is the exact same side that literally wants them killed and literally has not evolved and is not evolving. Do they not
never will.
These debates where, two sides will come together and say, guys, you know what? It's one thing to not take a side, but it's another thing, to go against the side that's actually somewhat supporting us.
Yeah. Look, I can't speak on behalf of all Palestinians and Arabs. I'm certain there's some liberal thinking Arabs and Muslims out there who do support their gay kids. Maybe it's an abomination in their country and all that, but they do love their kids and they have conformed to society in America and Canada. I don't know how, what the number is for those people and the proportions compared to those who don't. But we certainly know that the culture in itself is not one that supports that. Whereas in Israel, our motto is every life counts. So you're not going to find a father, or if you do, it's very rare, that says, you know what, my son is gay, I'm going to go and stone him to death. Right? He's going to say, okay, I don't like it. It's not for me, but you're my son. I love you. You do you. Just don't tell me what you're doing. I don't want to know about it. It's a form of acceptance, but it's still heartbreaking and it's still hard to hear, but it's not death. and it's not a public hanging, and it's not any of those things that would occur had you lived in a territory or a state that does not support the gay community. So it's crazy to think that you're going to align with the very people whose mentality is to murder you for who you are, while the other celebrates you for who you are and allows you to live free with all of your rights, while calling the other, a military murder machine,
Right.
and saying that these people are innocent victims, as if the whole conversation boggles me, as if they don't understand anything that the other side has done. It seems that
Ignorance is bliss, right?
launching rockets into kindergartens, stabbing elderly women and children, and all the acts of horrendous terrorism and murder don't really count. You know why? Because Israel has an army, and Israel is supported by the largest army in the world, the United States, and the biggest superpower. So you guys are the bad ones, and I don't care what else you're going to tell me and how you pink wash the whole gay issue. You're still the bad ones because they're the victims, and they didn't do anything to you.
So this goes beyond in my opinion, just the Israel situation or the Jewish situation. This is, and I think you've said it sort of in the conversation, it's about left and right in some ways. It's sort of left and right ideals where you have to support sort of one side. You have to have this like particular stance. So meaning the left is more about this, even though you mentioned something prior to filming, you mentioned something about Hillary Clinton, that, even Hillary, I'm with her. She was one that did not support gay marriages. And all of a sudden, when it's time for election, it's like, of course I support gay marriages.
And in Hillary's defense, and I don't do that often, but in Hillary's defense, she is allowed to have a change of heart. We all are. When I grew up, I didn't grow up with a lot of Asian people in Israel.
Right.
And when I came to Canada, I didn't know how to speak without offending or say something that's on my mind.
Right.
Today, I have so many Asian friends. I love my Asian community. I love Asian food, so let's not even go there. And it's a different world. I had not a change of heart. I was educated. I was informed. I was exposed. You have people with a bunch of opinions that have never laid their eyes in Israel. They never heard of the name Israel until they followed an Ilhan Omar, or they followed an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and now they align themselves with those views because everything else they say and do also fits their belief system. So now you're going into issues that you don't know nothing about because you support a certain candidate or a person or an ideal, simply because you're aligning with that line, with that party line. And I think what the world needs is a little bit of centrism. And it needs to say, we like some ideas here on the right. We don't like all of them, but we like some of them. And we like some ideas on the left. And let's work together to, like you said, let's come together and meet somewhere in the middle and see if we can make some concessions on those ideals. But what people are doing now more than ever, whether you want to blame the Trump presidency, but you already saw that coming, even through the Obama era, people have so far aligned themselves with their own parties that they are now blind to facts, to education, to history. That's what bothers me the most, that history is constantly being rewritten. And as if we should be ignoring everything that occurred prior to 1948 with the establishment of the State of Israel. Because remember, by their propaganda machine, Israel stole land. But what about the fact that Islam didn't exist 800 years ago? Who resided there? Where did the Jews come from before they were dispersed into Europe in a diaspora? Where did the Jews come from? How was Israel built? And Jerusalem, when you find relics and you find, old buildings and everything, that there's evidence there of the Jewish existence for centuries.
Well, I'll tell you, nobody is interested in the truth. Nobody's interested in the facts. The only people that want to keep that information are the people on top. The other people that we're actually fighting is the 80% that doesn't know really what's going on. They're just supporting something blindly. I remember my first experience really in advocacy. I went to York University and Very Hall, which is the hall where people have discussions in. There's a sign that says Zionism is racism, and two white people are sitting there. So for me, it was like, what is this all about? And I approach, and the people that are sitting there are saying, look, we're just here to kind of help. We're against capitalism. We're like, they had no clue. They're just puppets because at some point they had friends who said, are you against apartheid? Yeah, well, then you're against apartheid Israel. Is Israel apartheid? Don't ask too many questions. Just follow along. But in reality, we're seeing so many more sheep who are acting as if they're lions, roaring.
Now,
and
how many of those sheep, after you've informed them, have actually agreed with you?
Well, I would say that some of them agreed with me for a game, because you're not going to walk into a debate and walk out of it saying, you know what, that guy was right. I'm just going to completely change my mind. That's
my point.
Oh my God, I will tell you a story. When I was at York once, there was a big debate that was happening downstairs, and it was actually around the Iraq War, like when you were talking. And Israel had nothing to do with it. They said nothing about the Iraq War. It was not our business. It was America's business. We were just happy that someone was taking down Saddam Hussein, who clearly was a bad person. And
he attacked Israel many, many times.
Absolutely. People are forgetting that the Gulf War happened and Israel was the only country that was attacked. People are forgetting that he
was not involved in the Gulf War. It was attacked, but never got involved.
Because America said, don't get involved, we'll take care of you.
After being attacked.
Absolutely. But 100%, the facts are there. But the reality is, I was just there and I'm like, how did Israel get into this conversation? How did you bring this into it? So I went downstairs, I found this shirt on the wall that said, I stand with Israel, with a little flag, and I knew, okay, now I'm gonna be the representative, and I know enough facts to be able to battle them. It got to a point where some people got aggressive, but I was there for about 2.5 hours. They took a picture with me afterwards because me and this guy, I forget his name right now, he was Egyptian. We shook hands at the end and we said, this was a great conversation. Let's hope that we can do this again. So I felt enlightened about it, because saying, wow, we could possibly come to sort of some solution, because I was making sense about what I said. And my sense was, let's not forget what happened in history. Clearly, both our people were in the wrong in certain departments. Let's not, let's not wash our hands with it, but let's look towards a better future for both our people. And I thought this was a great common ground to be able to start and working towards a better solution. What ended up happening, they started an organization called Shalom Salam, and which was, peace and peace, Arabs and Jews coming together. I walked into the room and there was my picture with a target and holes in it and a sign that said, if you talk to this guy, walk away. And I was just like, this is the dialogue that you want to have? So I realized very, very quickly. I mean, clearly after, being a troll online and writing, they're not interested in the conversation. We need to hit the people on top, and those are the people that we need to convince. And in my opinion, the gay community needs to become more open to dialogue and to bring the people together, because they know real well what it's like when it's a battle. They've lived it. They're living it still today. In some cases, they can hold hands, and in some cases, they can't.
I'll tell you something. There's a different phenomenon today. The gays, at least the gays that I know, the majority that I know, are adamantly, vehemently against one person. And it is almost a consensus that they all hate Donald Trump. He is their enemy, not any Muslim country and not any other threat. He is their existential threat, according to them. And when they see the coming together of Trump and Netanyahu and Israel and all this, what do you think the gays start believing?
Of course. No
so this optics of gays, Israelis in Trump and liking Trump, they're liking their enemies, and now Israel is the enemy.
I'm with you on that, but clearly the hatred or the left, the extreme left. I don't want to paint all the left, under one brush.
No, there's some really decent.
No question. I mean, I vote liberal. I vote conservative. I don't align myself with a party. It's just whatever works for me. Now I'm conservative because that's how I feel.
When I was down here, just to put things on the record, when I moved down here as a gay person, I was a huge advocate and supporter of Barack Obama, believe it or not. And that was during his second re-election. And I even held a party to celebrate him because I thought he's really going to change the way, and he did. And I'll give him credit. He did change the way everybody started looking at gay people in this country and accepting us and giving us equality and marriage. And bless him for that. He's done great. But the last year of his presidency really showed me his true colors and really made me rethink my entire support for this man. And he went from, faking being a friend of Israel, and I say faking, and I'm not saying that with a grain of salt, to openly showing us his stance on how he feels about Israel and how he feels about Muslims and where he feels Israel should be in the UN. And when I realized that, I quickly remembered that his middle name, and I hate to say it, was Hussein. And I don't care what anybody tells me that he's not Muslim. I accept that he's not Muslim. I accept that he's Christian, but your middle name is Hussein. Odds are you are going to have some sort of sympathy to your not relatives, to his father, to his background, to his people, to his heritage. Don't tell me that there is no influence from that to his policymaking. So I do believe, aside from his apology tour to the entire Arab and Muslim community in the world, that he went across every Muslim country apologizing, but then turned around and voted against Israel and against Jerusalem at the UN, that this man is legit somebody who's impartial, that somebody who stood with Israel as he claimed he did, or there was a deeper, in my opinion, more sinister agenda. When you give the people who call for the annihilation of the Jewish country, of the Jewish state, you give them pallets of cash, knowing that they are out there producing nuclear weapons to fulfill that promise to annihilate Israel, you are helping these terrorists do the duty of killing Jews. So you have blood on your hands, Mr. Obama, in my opinion. So I went from fully supporting this man and loving him to completely hating the guy and realizing that, you know what? I'm not anywhere in the middle at this point. I'm against his beliefs. I'm against his beliefs. Not necessarily the part about gays, not necessarily about domestic policies, but where he stands on Jews, Israel, and foreign policies. I realized that we do not align. And that put me in a very bad scenario, very, very bad situation, the way I'm viewed by the gay community. I've been called all kinds of fun names, like a Trumpster, like an alt-right. I've been called alt-right. I'll take that as a compliment. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to laugh it off because you're going to call a gay Jew, Israeli, an alt-right. Okay? So, let's just go ahead and call Barack Obama the same thing if that's the case. Okay? I simply have a different opinion, and mine is backed up by facts and life experience. Like you said, we grew up in a different world. We grew up, and I would call it woke. That's in today's slang language. We were woke growing up. We saw our parents involved in wars. We saw our fathers taken away to defend the countries. For what? For existing? For existing as Jews? If you're anti-Zionism, how are you not anti-Semitic? Do you know what Zionism means? Existing as a Jew in your own nation as a Jew so that you're no longer being thrown into the ovens or into ghettos, and you're against that? If you're against that, you're anti-Semitic.
Listen, clearly I support everything that you're saying, and you said it so eloquently. And by the way, I love the cup.
Oh, thanks.
That's
if you had a question.
that's great.
A little bit Jewish, a little bit gay. What are you gonna do?
Listen, why not? It's you need a little cream with your coffee, right? It can't just be all black. Or it can be if you like it. That's fine. To each his own.
We all have our tastes.
There you go. What I want to finish off with, by the way, again, I want to say that was very well put together. What kind of hope? And I love that I'm using that, for the gay community, and it's Israel's national anthem and the Jewish people's dream of hope. What kind of hope do you see for, the gay community? Hopefully, not necessarily aligning with Israel. I don't want them to align with the policies. I don't need them to align with BB or whatnot. It's totally all right. But what do you think in terms of hope? Like, will they see the big picture? How many people sort of need to be hung on the streets of Tehran for them to know that this is not the side that actually supports us. The side that has one of the best, biggest gay parties in Tel Aviv. The people come from all over the world and is celebrated. And guess what? Some Israelis have a problem with it, but that's the freedom. I can have a problem.
Not the majority.
Scottish
Not the majority.
No, but that's the cool part. It doesn't affect us. We're about peoplehood. But what type of hope do you see for the gay community or the larger gay community to come to terms with the fact that Israel is a good state, that is very supportive of them, and is allowing everyone to live under their umbrella in safety, no matter if you're Muslim, Christian, gay, blue, green, you still have that right. So how are we able to ensure that we're going to have a hopeful future for the people?
One simple answer, and that's education. I think the fact that many professors in our colleges, in our high schools, when children grow up and the youth starts becoming more easily, they absorb information more and they become easily susceptible to being manipulated to learn certain traits and certain ideas and beliefs. That is where we need to start. The fact is that many professors in our countries, in both the United States and in Canada, are from a Muslim country or whatnot, and they do have their own sympathizing ideas about Israel and about their own countries. And they wind up indoctrinating the youth of every generation since you and I were in college of these very drastic, very, how should I say, I'm going to call it hateful ideas and views of Israel and views of America, where you have so many Americans, new generation Americans, who hate their own country. Forget Israel, okay? They hate America. They've been indoctrinated to hate America. And in the grand scheme of things, when you look at the bad and the evil that America does, and I'm not saying America is innocent, okay? But the evils that they do versus the evils that the other countries do, like Russia, like China, like Saudi Arabia and Iran, you can't even compare. There's no apples. We're talking about apples and a kernel of corn, okay? And it's two different things, but they only want to see how to apologize and how bad their country is and ask for forgiveness from the others. So my hope is that the real education, there'll start being, I believe, and I think Donald Trump spoke about this, I don't know how realistic this will be, but there has to be some sort of intervention in the education systems of both countries, where ideologies like that need to stay away from a professor's mouth. They need to stay away from the children's ears. You let them create their own ideas. Let them find out their own truth by showing them all of the facts, not selective facts cherry-picked by the professor. And that's where the hate starts. You're not going to get a simple white student with a Scottish background suddenly hating Israel if he wasn't taught to do that. And that's what's been happening from generation to generation to generation. Now we're Generation Z that's graduating this year, okay? You and I have already seen 2 or 3 generations grow up. And they all are becoming more and more susceptible to hate on Israel, to hate on America, to hate on our way of life, because they feel that we are the perpetrators and they are the victims. And that's wrong. If you grew up, I don't need to preach to you, but as you know, it's for the rest of the people listening. You and I grew up seeing what some of these people are capable of and how they think and how they operate. You can't come in peace to somebody that has a knife wielding at you, okay? That's not the time to discuss peace talks, right? That's the time to start defending yourself and defending those who need your defense. And that's what Israel constantly is being forced to do. You get these folks attacking us. I don't care if it's rockets, and I don't care if it's firearms or if it's a knife. We are being attacked. We defend. The minute we defend, you got that media, the mainstream media, that only shows us doing this action. They haven't showed what occurred for this reaction to happen. And what do? We have to protect our children. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect our women. We have to protect everything that is in line of being murdered and being attacked and being completely annihilated. And the problem is people only see what the media shows. And that is my second point, that aside from education, there has to be some form of regulation on the media. I feel like the media has a carte blanche today to report, and I call report with a grain of salt, anything in the way that they view it, rather than all the facts. There's redacted information here. They showed this clip without showing the conversation fully prior to. And people are getting these ideas by saying, oh my God, did you hear what the Prime Minister of Israel said the other day? But they didn't hear that sentence continue, right, where he said one thing and then he said, because of, to do this. It's crazy. It's crazy. So we are constantly being fed the steady diet of anti-Israel, anti-America propaganda, and the gays believe it because they believe those sources. To them, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, whoever you want to put out there, the major New York Times, are the right sources because they too attack the same enemy that they have, which is Donald Trump.
You bring up amazing points, and I'm hoping that there is going to be a change. And if I can recommend one thing to you, because I've sat here quietly, more than usual when I do interviews. You brought up some amazing points about the change in education in the media. What I would think, maybe I'm offering something to you. Many Jewish organizations after the Second Intifada in 2000, that there was so much misinformation that was coming from the media, talking negatively about Israel, and we were being attacked by the other side. They started, organizations like Stand With Us, Hasbara Fellowships, where they're able to at least educate the community about what's going on in Israel. I feel that there should be something within the gay community where, there should be advocates and people should be supporting, because I was taught that it's better to align yourself with someone based on, positive ideals. And I know for a fact, and the reason I speak in Israel's behalf, and I know you do, is because we know what Israel is all about. We know that it's imperfect. We know that there's issues. We know, at the end of the day, there's a government, there's taxes, there's internal issues, there's the army.
Which country doesn't?
Exactly. But the bottom line is we know, who we're really standing for, and it's the people. And it's the people without being, you're gay, you're Muslim. It's all the people. So I think that there should be some sort of an advocacy course or some sort of organization where maybe you could lead, maybe, you can.
Listen, I would love to. I just know the environment I'm in. Now, in Canada, it's much worse. In the gay community, I feel the gay community has been completely infiltrated in Toronto, where to the point where you speak as an Israeli, you're already looked upon as a terrorist or as a bad, evil person. And I've known personally because I visited since I moved down here. And I've had many interactions, and a lot of gay Muslims, and listen, they're cool guys, and I've been friends with them in this, but we don't talk Israel. We don't talk their country because we know our conversations are going to lead elsewhere. So we keep that away from the conversation. But, behind the scenes, they feel a certain way. We feel a certain way. It's very hard to want to educate somebody who refuses that information.
But what if you, and again, I'm merely throwing this out there, what if you create sort of a platform for two sides to come together and have a dialogue about it?
That'll be great.
And then it's not about I'm supporting you or I'm supporting you. And even if they learn something new, one new thing, like for example, where you're mentioning about rewriting history. We talk about Judea and Samaria. People will say, oh, you're probably a Zionist, settler. It's like, no, the West Bank is the West Bank of Jordan. Jordan, who occupied the area from 1948 to 1967 when they didn't call it an occupation. So why are we calling it the West Bank? Because it's...
Can I ask you something?
May, of course.
Let's not even go that far.
Right.
Listen to the name Judea.
Right. No, you're telling me. There's no...
No, I'm not telling you.
No, there's no question.
The public.
Yeah, but same thing about Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv wasn't created, if we're already talking about it, which is the new city, and was created 105 years ago when we're just celebrating Israel's 75 years. Right. So there is so much flaw when it comes to the other side. Here, I'll give you one for you. Palestinians, which goes from the word Plishtim, means occupiers. Conquerors. conquerors. I mean, that's the name of
Where, and then they come from the Philistines.
yeah, they're the Palestinian people. And by the way, interestingly enough, Goliath and David, Goliath was a Philistine, and David was.
But hold on.
Yes.
But Islam never existed then.
Wait a second. So Islam is not 800. I'm just going to correct you on the time because that's about 1600 years ago, 1400 years ago. Sorry, when Islam.
Sorry, I don't have my.
But it's when they arrived to that area and when they said that it belonged to them. Muhammad never even made it to that region. It was 30 years after his death.
Right.
I mean, facts. We can look at it.
I want to know how many times Jerusalem is mentioned in the Quran.
0, and it's mentioned in the Torah 700 times. That's not the point. We're not. See, you were saying something about facts. Like arguing on points. If it's on points, we would win. But it's not. It's about rhetoric. It's about slogans, old slogans, new form of propaganda. But what we need to do is not focus on that, even though we know the facts. It's to at least say, let's live together, let's aim, because you and I are not going to make a change between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And if we think we are, we're crazy. But what we can do is at least allow people here to feel safe, people here to feel that they can still have dialogue, and do it in a way where it's not trying to demonize other people just because you belong to their party.
As much as I like your idea, I have to say, and I'm being very truthful, I'm not an impartial person. And I'm not the right person to do that because I'm partial. I love Israel.
But
I'll tell you something.
But again, I'll give you an example. So you know what? I'm going to ask you this, and we're sort of leaving the topic. But do you love the Jewish people?
I love them. Absolutely.
So there were a few people, not a few, quite a bit of communities, religious communities, that were breaking the rules and partying in this. Did you not call them out on Facebook?
I did.
Did you not go against the grain in order for the better good? And so my point
I did, because I get the same offense when I see some gay dude on crack robbing a bank and doing something bad, and I feel that's an embarrassment to my community.
Exactly.
The same way, if they're not following the rules like all of us need to be following, and they think that they're better or whatever it is, for whatever reason, I don't agree with it and I will call it out. But guess what? As you know, as probably as you've seen, that post garnered me so much hate because the people that normally align with me and support me came after me for writing that. And rightfully so. I understand they have their certain, that they feel, sympathy and whatnot. But look, I like honesty. I like to be honest, and I like fairness.
You don't need to preach to me. I think I'm one of the first ones that put that stuff out there because
for me, it's about fairness. If you're.
Well, that's the thing. So when you and that's where I see you as. So you discredit yourself a little bit. So let me pump you up, because you were saying, well, I'm sort of biased about it. No, everyone is. You're just open about the fact that you know what Israel is all about.
Right.
You know what it's like. You have stories that you've told me growing up about gays, Arab gays who would come to hide in Tel Aviv. Like, if these stories were out, why do you need to hide in Tel Aviv? I mean, clearly they're taking care of you in Ramallah and
they're not. They're not.
Of course not. So when you bring in your touch, your stories, your reality, it actually becomes better as a pitch, as opposed to I'm just coming here to lay the woodwork and not really get into anything. And it's great. You can't have the entire stage. You can bring other people with other ideas who don't exactly align with yours, but they would have the idea of coming together. This is what real Israel is all about. Go visit it, see it for yourself. And funny enough, you're looking at a big wave of Saudi Arabians coming to Israel, seeing what it's all about with their own eyes, as opposed, like looking for our tails, looking for the horns that we do not have. And all of a sudden seeing that they're being received like normal human beings. And it's mind-boggling to them. We laugh at it.
It's beautiful.
Amazing. And that's why Birthright is so successful, because it's saying, hey, comment. But like Birthright or anything, there's always going to be somebody who's going to try to hurt it. How come they're not taking us to the Palestinian territories? It's Israel. Why would we take?
You got what I call the self-hating Jew.
Oh, we can talk about Bernie Sanders and friends in our next talk. Lior, I want to thank you very much for being here, for advocating, for shining a light on this issue. And let's come together. The point where it doesn't matter who you're sleeping with, what's your color,
It really doesn't.
And
it really doesn't.
Of course it doesn't, and we're starting to realize it more. But when you bring old ideals into the table and you cannot get out of your own shadow, that's when really problems ensue. So I wish us the best, and really amazing talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too.
Take care, buddy.
See you later, my friend.